All right. So great. Letting some people are coming in. Fantastic. Fantastic. Welcome, people. Welcome, welcome. See some familiar faces or names rather. Excellent. All right, we'll give it a minute or two for everyone to come in. Give it another minute. You know, Matt, I think this this particular topic is long overdue.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it
think
is. It is.
yeah, absolutely. One of the big things that well, frankly, for all the doctors that are joining, one of the big considerations when it comes to this particular topic, in terms of the location of your clinic is where do we start? Where do we even start considering where to have our office? Whether you are looking to, relocate your practice, if you're looking to have a completely new start, you know, there's certain considerations as far as you may be a local in the area that you're thinking to build in, but how do you really know exactly where is the best spot for you? And once you've determined the general area in which you want to practice that fits the demographic that you want to service, well, what's the future look like for you in that space? How's the growth going to look? What's the lease going to look like? How's that going to impact your ability to practice for the now, but also for the foreseeable 10, 15, 20 years? So I think this is going to be a fantastic webinar, guys, to learn and expand your knowledge base and get some excellent nuggets of wisdom here as far as how to begin the search, how to, what things to consider when we're thinking about opening a practice or even considering to stay in the space that you're in right now as far as the area is concerned. So thank you everyone for coming in. My name is Jason Yim. I'm one of the senior consultants here at Cirrus, and it's my absolute pleasure to have Matt Bladowski here. Matt Bladowski is president of Dental Strategy, a dental specialized demographics firm that I think is a fantastic resource for all of you. We've worked uh, for over the past few years a significant number of times to help people realize their dreams of deciding where to build the clinic and finally negotiating the lease to stay there for the foreseeable future. Matt, if you may, like, please take it away. I've put a poll out as well, just to get an idea of where people are at as far as their dental real estate journey. The chat is also open, everyone. So please feel free to type in exactly where you are in Canada. Uh, we love to get a sense of, like, whereabouts our Canadians are coming from in terms of the webinar attendance. But yes, Matt, please take it away.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Jason, and welcome everybody. Thanks for the great introduction. We we do a lot of things with dentists, so different dentists know us for different reasons. Demographics is something we've always done. Most dentists actually know us for our practice valuations. We're the biggest independent dental practice valuator. But the nice thing with what we do with demographics, this is a common denominator, something that we use for all the services that we provide. So really the focus of today is we want to talk about how we can use the information that's out there and really the importance of having great location, having great lease. And I use those two things interchangeably, because at the end of the day, you can have the best location, but if you don't have a lease in place and the landlord can get rid of you, then it's really relevant how good your location is. I'll start off on the positive note. Canada is still the best place. I emphasize the word still, because we've been doing these presentations for almost 20 years now, and I've been saying it 20 years ago, and I'm saying it now, that Canada is still the best place in the world to start, purchase, and own a dental practice. And anybody would like to have a more detailed discussion about it, yeah, you know where to find me. The nice thing about being in this space is it's a very resilient industry. We've survived recession, survived COVID, survived Trudeau. We're going to survive Trump. We're going to do well. This industry isn't going anywhere. And really, jokes aside, this is a great industry to be in, and we're very fortunate to be here. And there are a lot of low-hanging fruits that the dentists in Canada are not utilizing yet. Okay, I'm trying to get to the next slide. There we go. You've all heard this: location, location, location. Obviously, dental practice is a professional health service, but because people pay out of pocket, it is also considered a retail. And location is really important as a result. So what does that mean? It means that to be successful, you need to find the best location. When you have your location, figure out how to monetize it to its fullest potential. And then how do we sell it at a premium? So these are the three sort of different stages in a dentist career, but it is important that we utilize the information that we have and make the best out of it. And this is really where we're fortunate to work with Cirrus in being those three things. And over many years, we've worked together and helped dentists in those three areas and run, start, and sell very successful practices. So let's talk about what is good, what is great, what does a good location mean? And what I would like to do is use an example. If we just say that the difference between a good and a great location is one extra patient a month. We all know it's not a lot, but we're talking about one extra patient a month. So my question is, if by having a better location, you have that one extra patient a month, what does that equate in revenue in the lifetime of your practice? Now, this is a question asked in seminars. Right now, we probably can't ask this question, but the answer is actually D. So by having that extra one patient a month, by having a better location, it will equate to $6 million at the end of your career. So let's look at the math. If we get one patient a month due to a better location, which is a very low bar, that's 12 months, 12 patients a year. Average practice ownership is 30 years. So 12 times 30, 360 patients. And average patient in a general practice spends about $6,000 in the lifetime with the practice. Not in all of the years that they see dentists, but we know dentists, we know patients don't stay with a practice for too long. So based on what we've seen, how long patients stay with a practice, they on an average will spend $6,000. So 360 times 6,000, we're looking at 2.16 million just from them alone. Now, we know patients refer. So if only one of 20 patients refers, and we're talking about mom referring her son and father referring the wife, 1 in 20 is not it's not a high number. So again, we're being extremely conservative. But in this situation, if we look at those numbers and we consider that this one person will refer, 1 in 20 people will refer, and then they will refer somebody, and so on, we're going to get another $4 million. So that's how math works, and that's how we get into $6 million, $6 million at the end with just that one additional patient per month. And again, we're being very conservative, but I didn't want to make the number astronomical because then it loses their relevance. But the point is, little changes will result in a lot of money at the end and throughout your dental career. So here's a couple examples we have of what can happen. So here's an example with one of our early clients that decided, hey, I don't really need anybody to negotiate my lease. I'm good with the seller. The seller was owned this practice here, and it was a gas station that was transformed into dental practice. So in the back, you see that is a dental practice. And something went wrong, and the seller was upset. And in the lease, they didn't specify what's going to happen with that roof there. So the purchaser was stuck with a dental practice that looked like a gas station. Here's another one, a little closer to home. Somebody saved a lot of money in their lease review. They got a good deal. But again, they didn't specify some of the details of what can the landlords do with respect to their neighbors. From a marketing perspective, it might appeal to some groups. But if you're running a pediatric practice, family practice, this might not be the ideal spot. So again, you can have great demographics, but if you have a lease that results in something like this, it's not looking good. We've seen this a lot. Dentists generally pick locations that look good. They don't do the homework. They go with something that looks and feels good, which leads to the wrong decisions. And we see it all the time. We see dentists falling in love with the wrong locations. And on the purchasing side, it's even worse. We see dentists falling in love with the wrong practice and the wrong location. And in both cases, they're so set on this practice, on this space. They've been searching, and a lot of the callers can identify with that, with the search that they had, and how amazing it is to finally find that ideal practice and that ideal location. And lease really becomes something they will deal with down the road. And that's a tremendous mistake. And we've seen it over and over again. And I don't want to take Jason's space, but he's going to talk about a lot of stories where the dentists just have not done their homework, not because they didn't know any better, but because they didn't think it's going to happen to them. So here's how we can do it better. Here's an example of a dentist living in Richmond Hill that says, I would like start a practice in Richmond Hill, or perhaps an existing practice owner that wants to expand or is looking for a new location to move the practice. What are their choices? How do you look for a space? For years, we had dentists calling us and say, Matt, can you help us find a space? We tried to hook them up with commercial real estate. Sometimes it worked better, sometimes it didn't. But would it be nice if there was like an MLS for dentists? Would it be nice if searching for a commercial space would be similar to looking for a home? Well, now there is. And this is something that we've partnered exclusively with Cirrus, where the only company in Canada that can do this, that can essentially find the spaces. And these are not just any commercial real estate spaces. These are spaces that are already zoned and are suitable for dentists. And you can tell Jason, hey, I'm looking for a practice that has these characteristics. I want to have 4 ops. I want to have big windows. I want to be in the first floor. I want to be on 5th floor. I need parking. I need signage. And there are filters that will actually give you the locations that fit that criteria. So in this example, we're able to find this space. It looks good. The dentist is happy. It meets all the criteria. And now we got to figure out if this is a good spot. So what we would do is we would do 10-minute driving distance from this location. The reason we pick 10 minutes is based on where the practice is located. 10 minutes is the time that patients are willing to drive to the practice before distance becomes a factor in them choosing another practice. And we're going to call this region the city of Dentsville. So what do we want to know about city of Dentsville? Well, we can find out a lot of information about it. And really depending on the type of practice that you have or you're looking to set up, you can actually figure out the market size, whether you're having more family practice, more cosmetic, doing orthosurgery, pediatric, endo, holistic. You can actually figure out, you can get the information, how many potential patients would there be that would be interested in those services, and we can compare it to the province average. Now, these numbers in this particular presentations have been modified from the original. So it's for illustrative purposes only, but you can not only see how big the market is, but you can actually see how attractive that market is compared to the province. You can get information, not only how many patients, how many potential patients there are, how many people go to the dentist, but the frequency to know if they're coming in only for emergencies, how long they've been gone. And this is really valuable information, really because of the time of this presentation, and it is late in the day. I'm not going to go into details, but really this information in the hands of a marketer, professional practice management consultant, it's the same thing as a handpiece in your hands. It can do wonders. You can, based on this information, you can improve your recall, your purging protocol. You can schedule better your patients. There's a lot of information that you can have with this. One of the things that people always look for when moving the practice or starting a new practice is dentists want to go into those locations that are new, the new builds, the new subdivisions. And this is actually one of the biggest mistakes we found is a lot of the times the patients are not moving far enough from their existing dentist. So it may look like there's a lot of new houses being built, but the patients aren't really looking for a new dentist. But with the information there is, you can actually see how many patients are looking to leave their existing dentist and how many patients have moved from far away to be looking for a new dentist. A lot more information. Now this is great for marketing. You can see how many patients there are in every age bracket. You can look at their status of the oral health. Again, this is information that if you give it to your marketer, you're looking for Google AdWords, you're looking for social media, you're looking at what to post, what is the information that is valuable, that's going to result in the most patients coming in. Well, this information is critical, and it's going to help those people help you improve your practice. Now, it may look like the big brother's watching you. I mean, when I look at this information, I ask even myself, how do they access to all this information? It's kind of scary. They know so much about you. They know so much about information about households and what do you buy, how you spend your time, how you spend your money. One of the things I enjoy is really looking into the methodology and where this information is being collected. But to my best knowledge, this information is correct, and there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of ways this information is being collected, and yeah, the big brother is always watching and collecting information on you. More information. I mean, availability of benefits. Again, it's helpful for you if you're thinking assignment, non-assignment practice. And then we have We call them the decision indexes. Should you go assignment? Should you provide third-party financing? Co-payment. Now, if you have patients coming to you and saying, waive my copay because the other dentist is going to do it. Well, we can actually look at this information and see if it's true. So for example, in this example, a high assignment index means that patients do have benefits, but they need assignment because they don't have the disposable income. They are open to third-party financing, again, because of the disposable income, but they're not necessarily needing you to waive your copay. Now, I know that none of the people on this call would ever do that, but it is a conversation that you will have with patients. And when that patient's at your door and they're willing to pay, and you need that patient because you have the space and you have a lot of costs, some decisions need to be made. So this information helps you make those decisions. Information about marketing. Again, there's a lot of decisions you can make, and with this information, you can make better decisions and spend your money more wisely. Decide when to open your practice. Based on the information we have, we know if you need to adjust your hours. Now, all those things that we have, there's over 3,000 pieces of information that we collect for each of the locations. This is something that Americans have been doing for years. There's market research companies that have been doing this. All the big guys are doing this. In Canada, it's still a Wild West. Most dentists don't know this information exists. Most dentists don't make their decisions based on this information. So that is a great opportunity. Ethnic practices, I'm not going to go through this, but anything you want to know about any ethnicity, it's all here. So what do we do with all this? Well, we can make some decisions. People ask about competition. This is something dentists are very concerned about as well. They say the ratio of dentists per patient per postal code. I mean, that's a very irrelevant information because we know that patients are willing to travel across postal codes to see a dentist. So these are the things that we look in our analysis. We look at the number of actually full dentist equivalent. So not the number of dentists registered, but we look at all the times where they work. We look at the different practices they work and amalgamate to figure out how many full-time dentists there are, when how old they are. We're going to get that information, knowing when they graduated. And then information about the practice in terms of when are they open, type of patients they're accepting, the waiting time for certain appointments, their structure, their marketing. All this information gives us a great indication on how competitive the market is. Now, the big difference really between the demographic and the competitive is the demographics information that we purchase from third parties. Most of it is, 99% of it is secondary research. With competitive, a lot of it is primary research. We don't have perfect information. Some practices we have very good information. Some practices we have very limited. We never disclose specific information on any practice, but we do use the information that we have to be able to determine how competitive a particular area is. So for example, in this case, with all this information, this is in the 45th percentile, meaning it's an average practice from a competitive perspective. And then when we're done, we come up with a report card. We give a number to demographics, competition, and the lease. So these are really the three things that go well together. We know the importance of demographics. We know the importance of competition. And we need to have the lease because that's the part that makes the other two things relevant. And at the end, we'll make a decision if this is the right place for us. If not, well, there are a lot of other places we can look at. Jason has access to a lot more real estate across the country, and we have access to over 5,000 locations where we can pull this information. At the end, there's a myth in there that the market is saturated. The reality is attractive markets are the competitive markets. I'm not going to say that, hey, this is Canada's a great market, therefore you can just go in there, be successful. That's not the case. And a lot of dentists will ask me, where's that golden spot? Is there this hidden gem? And I can tell you right away, there is no hidden gem. We're not going to find a location that is so much better than that nobody has thought of. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to combine the information that we have to get that one extra patient a month. If we can do that, that's $6 million in your pocket. So that really the solution is, I tell dentists, worry about what you can control. You can't control the competition. The competition will always be tougher. There's always going to be more dentists. There's always going to be more competitive dentists coming in. So that's not something we can do anything about. What we can do is have a great lease in place, because that will ensure that you're protecting your goodwill and the knowledge that you have, convert it into a competitive advantage. So that is it for my part. Jason, over to you. Do we want to entertain questions now, or we're going to do your part and the questions at the end?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. One of the big things that I got from your highlights was use the data. This is a very significant piece. Thank you for all that data. It's frankly it can be so much that it's overwhelming. So it's important to have someone like you to distill it to refine the search, because there's a lot of information out there, frankly. And for many of our attendees and many of the dentists out there, going through that data is a significant challenge. So, using the data to determine, where you should be situated, what are the best for them spots. Using that data is a critical piece, rather than having your decisions driven by, for example, sentiment over a certain area, or some kind of emotional factor when it comes to a particular space. That's a huge piece. And segueing into this next discussion here, I think it's very relevant to highlight this next piece, which is, again, using the data to determine what's the lease going to look like once you've had Matt determine what areas of the area you're looking at, what areas are the most viable for what you're looking to do, what you're looking to get out of your practice, what kind of demographic population you're looking to service here. This is going to be an absolutely huge piece. It's determining how your stay is going to look like as far as your real estate. I mean, what's the office going to look like? What's the rent going to look like? Are you going to be feeling any potential pain in the first few years as far as increasing rents or otherwise? Or will you have a smooth transition over the next 20? The lease will have an enormous determination as far as how this goes. So in terms of the lease itself, one of the big things, again, in terms of first of all, I do need to add this disclaimer as well. Of course, I am an employee of Cirrus Consulting, and Matt is the president of Dental Strategy. For your knowledge as well, your CE credits will be processed within 10 days. The key thing about having someone like us do the discussion with the landlord in terms of the lease is that, frankly, we've had 30 years of negotiating experience under our belt, with 13,000 leases negotiated or created for those that own their own building as well. typically, in any given year, we represent, give or take, 500 doctors throughout North America. So we do operate in Canada and also the US. Regarding the data, this is a huge piece because the important thing to note is, where are you getting your information from and how are you going to be interpreting this data? So we utilize a software that tracks 95 billion square feet of real estate throughout North America with 4.6 million properties tracked. So, once you have met, determine some key places to set up shop, we can certainly utilize the software to help verify the real estate data to determine how the rent's going to look like, what the area is going to look like as far as the lease is concerned, and what the projection is for your stay for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So this particular data here that I'm showing you, take it with a grain of salt because this data really depends on your particular building type, your particular area through Toronto or Vancouver. But the idea here is to give you a sense of what we're looking at when it comes to helping you determine if this space is the right space for you. So what we want to look out for is trends as far as rent increases, but also vacancies, because a huge piece through COVID is that we determined that there was a very significant uptick in vacancies, especially in the office real estate market. We've also seen this recently with regards to certain markets, in regards to the retail segments. But the key thing to note here is that you need the data. You need the data to determine what the situation is at the moment, how much leverage you have when it comes to negotiating a lease once we've determined that this particular area is viable. And also using the data is very relevant when it comes to negotiating the lease with the landlord as a piece of leverage to indicate to them and highlight to them what the situation is like. Now, when it comes to the practice startup, a couple of key things to consider here when it comes to that. We've got a 9-step process here as far as we're concerned. The first thing is, using the data again. Let's formulate a plan. Let's formulate a business plan to get a sense of what your practice will look like. What you want it to be. How do you want it to run? What's the burn rate going to be? What's the projection for production going to look like over the next 5-10 years? How sellable is the practice after you're done with it? Formulating a plan is absolutely the first key step. In addition to formulating a plan, as far as what areas you'd want to practice in, ideally. Also, a key piece to this is I would definitely emphasize to have the correct team on your side. It's very important to assemble a team that is as dental specific as possible. You've already seen through some of the dental demographics that this can be extremely granular, and you can use this certainly to your benefit. This is something that the general public does not have access to. And if you're looking to have a practice that is as successful as possible, having that cutting edge as far as that information is critical, and having people on your team that have that knowledge is absolutely critical as well. In addition to that, we want to make sure that the site you're selecting is the ideal one for you. It's going to fit, the majority of the ticks in terms of the boxes you're looking to fill, because there's certainly some key considerations here when it comes to selecting a site. The first thing is, as a dentist, it's very difficult to leave once you've set up shop. I did another webinar recently where we highlighted the cost to build a dental clinic, specifically in downtown Vancouver. And in downtown Vancouver right now, we're looking at upfit costs of $400 per square foot up. So this is clearly a significant cost. And, given that, we want to make it abundantly clear that this is absolutely the correct spot for you before we even move to step 4, which is reviewing and negotiating the offer to lease or the letter of intent. The letter of intent, many people will perceive this as somewhat of a formality, as an entrance into negotiating the final form lease. But candidly, it sets the tone and the precedent for the conversation moving forward. So it has a lot of weight when it comes to what to expect out of the negotiation. This is absolutely critical to have this document reviewed and negotiated as much as possible. Once we've done that, we can certainly move to beginning the preliminary office drawings. We want to make sure that, if the landlord is open to having you in the space to operate out of the space, what we want to do now is certainly verify from a design perspective that this particular space will fit your needs and requirements. Once that's done, we certainly want to negotiate all the nitty-gritty, the details in the lease, which we'll touch on a number of those later on tonight. But the reason we'd want to negotiate the lease specifically rather than accepting at face value what the landlord presents to us is it's quite clear to me whenever I'm presented a lease from a landlord, it typically is a standard form lease. Why is that a question you may ask? Well, a standard form lease may be fine for the coffee shop or the accounting firm, but as we all know, a dental office is simply put is not a coffee shop. It has a lot of significant considerations to take in when it comes to the space itself and the business model as well. As the business model, as far as dentistry is concerned, a number of considerations that are in the lease have huge weight as far as the future of the clinic for the now, but also for that eventual transition as well. So simply put, we want to be able to ensure that that document that binds you to the space is as a good fit for you as possible. Just like how we're verifying that the area that you're interested in is in fact the one that you should be building in. Once we've done all that, we certainly want to finalize the site design. And, once you've signed the lease, you can, of course, begin construction and we'll, of course, prepare to open and finally begin opening shop. So when it comes to some of the key pieces here to determine, how the future will look like in this particular space, in the space that you have decided upon, we certainly want to leverage these 7 key financial variables as much as possible. You may all be very familiar with the term base rent. It's self-explanatory. It's the amount of rent you'll be paying. Usually it's $1 per square foot. This is certainly something that is quite negotiable. And again, going back to the data, this is why the data is so important, is to get an understanding of what others are paying for in the area, get an understanding of historically what the landlord has offered other tenants, even in the same building. But also we want to be cognizant of number 2, how much those base rents are increasing on an annual basis. We want to be able to manage those as much as possible. Number 3, common area maintenance. This is sometimes overlooked, I find, but is extremely negotiable. One of the key things here is that people are focused on the base rent, but when it comes to the garbage disposal and security costs and landscaping, that can be missed. And frankly, it doesn't have to be. This is certainly something that can be negotiated with the landlord. Not to say that we, of course, would negotiate with the landscaping company that the landlord has hired to perform the landscaping, but rather when it comes to common area maintenance, we want to keep everyone as accountable as possible. The idea here is that if you're looking at a particular area and Matt has verified that this area has, for example, good growth or good trends towards growth over the next 5, 10, 15 years, that is something that we're using the data to create a model of growth for your clinic, let's say. Now, when it comes to the common area maintenance, sometimes that can be unpredictable because one year you may have a lot more snow and it may cost a lot more to plow it in your property. So the chem fees will increase. But having some additional control over this and as far as the let's say the ability to check and verify exactly what you're paying for is key as far as managing your overhead costs. Also, fixturing. If you're looking to build a new office, or for even those that are looking to expand, this is a key piece. It will allow you or your contractor to build. Simply put, it will allow them to go into the space and build rent free, i.e., they'll be building while you don't pay rent. Ideally, we'd like to see as much as possible here, because especially with discussions of tariffs and otherwise, even through COVID, we saw this. There have been some significant delays as far as getting equipment and supplies to build the office. Having more time is on your side when it comes to this build process. But also, in addition to that, something that I find is missed as well is the free rent period. So we've discussed fixturing period, where it's a period that allows your contractor to go into the space and build the space. Typically, that's rent free. But on top of that, one of the key considerations here is, is the discussion of you as a tenant. What we found is, frankly, tenants are the best tenants. Dentists are the best tenants on the planet. More often than not, dentist is going to stay in a space long term. And if you're about to invest significantly into a space, it certainly wouldn't hurt to discuss a free rent period at the beginning of your term to give you an added boost, like a little added lift while you're getting your feet off the ground. This one's also a big one. Tenant improvement allowance is encompassing, simply put, money that the landlord is indicating they're providing to you to build out a space. Now, it may be tempting to take that when a landlord is suggesting they'll give you $25 a square foot over 2,000 square feet. That's significant money to help build out an operatory or work on plumbing for the space. But it's very important to note as well that landlords are not necessarily in the business of loaning money. They're primarily in the business of providing you a space. So this one we typically describe as fool's gold, because more often than not, what happens is the moment you take tenant improvement allowance, it also conversely can increase your rent. So there's a balance to be had here as far as this is concerned. It may be very valuable to you to have an added boost from the landlord in this regard, but the balance needs to be struck when it comes to taking tenant improvement allowance, and also an impact on rent. We simply put, we wouldn't want you to take on additional tenant improvement allowance if it significantly increased your rent. The converse is also true. If you took zero tenant improvement allowance through the negotiation, it can be determined whether or not the landlord would be willing to decrease your rent as a result. Now, that's a piece where the landlord is indicating they're providing you money to build the space. The second piece here, number 7, is very interesting. Landlord work. This is a little bit different. This one is more so the landlord doing the work for you and paying for it. So this is always an interesting one that we see, because again, as I said earlier, dentists are known to be very high quality tenants. Having you as a tenant in a space is very valuable. and a lot of landlords will bend over backwards to have you in the space. We did a renewal recently in, let's say, the North GTA, and as a result of negotiating a 10-year renewal, we had the landlord replace the air conditioning unit, as it was an aging building and it was an older AC unit, which netted as a benefit $20,000 repair. So, that was during a renewal. If you're looking to do a new build, we can say that you're in essence you're bringing to the landlord the big bag of money, and that's a huge opportunity to get a number of wins financially. So to illustrate how important, using the data and uh, discussing with the landlord, how the rent can impact you and how we can make a better deal for you, is this piece. So, many people will that I've talked to that, are in a space right now, they'll pay the landlord, they're happy to pay the landlord, nothing's amiss, everything's fine with the landlord and the space, and they're happy to carry on with life. But it's very important to know the impact here to the clinic, because if you're paying $5,000 a month, if the landlord has set an increase of 3%, which is a pretty typical increase, to be fair, from what I've seen. Think about it this way: if you're about to start your own clinic and you're going to do your first new build, the impact here is $2.923 million over the next 30 years. It's a very significant impact here. And this starts right from the very beginning. So any impact we can have at the very beginning of your lease is extremely significant down the line. So in terms of some of the timelines here, as far as leasing is concerned, for many dentists, once they build an office, they may remain there for 20 plus years. The average that a dentist will stay is 26 and a half years. So it's really important to note what the timelines as far as the lease is concerned, how that looks. So typically what we see is, if you're looking to do a new build, we'd want to work on a 10-year initial term. This will satisfy the banking requirements as well, because before they provide you a loan, they want to be ensured that there's sufficient term on the lease for you to be able to pay that loan. Now, the key thing to note here is, between the first 10 years and the next 5 years at this first lease renewal, there's a significant step that is taken into consideration, and that is the option to renew. So within the option to renew, there's typically a deadline that you need to be mindful of before you exercise. You need to indicate to the landlord, if you are intent on staying, if you are intending on using exercising the option to renew, you need to indicate to the landlord with a certain notice period. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's 12 months before renewal. But the key thing to note is that if you somehow miss this option to renew, you lose those options to renew. And at that particular point, if you had negotiated a lease previously, any wins that were won during that initial negotiation, they potentially can go out the window, and the landlord can present to you an entirely new lease at that point, with new lease terms, with new rent, and so on. Very important to note how this works. So, going back to some of the data here, how to maximize what you have and who you are. Well, frankly, like I said, dentists, you're the best tenant on the planet. I did a recent dinner with a major bank here in Toronto, and what they told me was, even in the height of COVID in 2020, the default rates for dentists was extraordinarily low for their loans. It was 0.045%. So, from a banking perspective, the banks love you. From the landlord's perspective, you're a fantastic tenant. It's hard for you to leave. As I said, total tenancy here for the practice is usually 26 and a half years. So, given all that, we know that you're a high-end type of tenant. You put significant money into a space. This is your leverage. to emphasize, look, we're here for the long haul. We want to make a plan, Mr. Landlord, to stay in the space for as long as possible. And we're not like the restaurant that only lasts 2 or 3 years before they go to default. We're not like the clothing store that has to shut down during COVID. We're here to stay. Again, significant leverage to utilize here when it comes to negotiating this lease. Now, for those that, depending on the area, if you're, for example, you're deciding where to build, and you have Matt go through the map and help you determine which areas may be best for you. You know, we've certainly had a discussion about leasing at this point, but depending on the area, you might not have opportunities like in the GTA or in Vancouver or any of the larger city centers to lease a space. You may be forced to face a buying decision. You might have to buy a particular piece of real estate in order to start your clinic. And it certainly has its perks. There's no doubt about that. You know, one of the key things is, you know, obviously be your own landlord. No need to complain about the landlord situation when it's you. Also, for a lot of people, what I find is when I talk to them about their desire to own a building, one of the key pieces is they want to have it for their retirement. They want to have it as a passive form of income. They want to have it as sort of a legacy piece to pass on to their children. These are all fantastic things. You have greater control over what happens to the property as well. But of course, the downside is, you know, typically it's a much more significant upfront cost. Not only that, as we discussed earlier, when it comes to the common area maintenance, the CAM, and other maintenance for the building, if you're the sole building owner, all those costs that were shared in a multi-tenanted building, they're now all yours. So there's a much more significant cost in that regard as well. So some of the things to consider here, whereas with leasing, certainly there's a much smaller upfront cost. You're making monthly payments. You do have to do a build out with either scenario. But of course, one of the key considerations here is cash flow. You know, especially for the larger DSOs, simply put, they don't have any interest in purchasing real estate because of cash flow. If they spend $2 million on a building, that's $2 million they don't spend to potentially purchase another clinic or upgrade another clinic. So, that's some of the differences here. It's, of course, it's entirely up to you. It depends on your particular area, but some of the key things to consider as well. Also, in terms of your ability to relocate. If you own a piece of commercial real estate, depending on the area and the value of your clinic, or excuse me, the value of your building, if you ever needed to relocate or sell the building, it may be more difficult, especially given the way real estate prices have been going up. Whereas with a lease, that can be negotiated in, the ability to expand into the adjacent units, or if it need be, if your lease is expired and you're looking for more room, it's as simple as potentially leaving. Certainly, there's considerations while leaving, but it's, you know, there's certainly no buy sell scenario required with that. So if you're looking for a new space, you know, you're staring down the proverbial barrel of a new lease. What do you need to look out for when it comes to this document? So I know we're running low on time, so I'm prepared to bore you with going through every single term here. No, I'm kidding, guys. It's a lot, but some of the key things here is that, you know, there's dozens of items here which can be negotiated in terms of release. We certainly want to watch out for things like, again, we touched on this earlier, fixturing period, especially for the long-term viability of the sale. We want to watch out for things like what's in the assignment language of the lease. For those that are family people, have children, you know, one of the key things to consider as well is leases. Commercial leases are binding to all successors and heirs. So if something happens to you, your next of kin or those that are successors in the corporation will be liable. So having something like death and disability as a conversation piece with the landlord is very important. But there's a number of other items that we can leverage here to make the space, much more viable for you and make this a better deal for you. One of the ones that I'll touch on here is the use provision. So this one is quite interesting. It can be this particular piece can be either very simple or it can be very complicated, depending on what you want to do with it. This allows you, the tenant, the ability to practice and do what you want to do in your space. Conversely, it can prevent you from operating in a certain way in your space. One of the key things that we'd want to work on is, are you bringing any specialists? So the key thing there is, if you have, let's say, a usage that says that you're going to operate as a general dentist, for example, but you bring in a periodontist twice a month. The consideration for the landlord is now we've got two different types of dentists, two different operations in the space. Is this allowed? Furthermore, in terms of that usage, do you have any exclusivity regarding that in the plaza that you're in or in the building that you're in? This is a key thing that we can potentially work into your lease. This one, it needs to be carefully managed because it can be either very useful or it can be detrimental. I had recently a doctor that was on, let's say, the east. They've got one space in a plaza at the moment that has exclusivity over general dentistry. And everything's hunky-dory up until the point where the business partner indicates they need to expand and they want to expand and have an ortho office. Problem is that there's no space beside them. They can't expand their unit. They need to set up a new lease in an entirely different unit on the opposite end of the plaza. But because their exclusivity indicates that they're, in terms of the original clinic, they have exclusivity over general dentistry and orthodontia, the landlord is not allowing the business partner, which is, of course, the current tenant in the space, they're not allowing them to open an ortho office in the same plaza. So this particular section, it needs to be carefully managed because this has larger implications as far as, can you bring on specialists or can you even have any, let's say, complementary businesses working out of the space, whether it's your own or someone else's. Also, Matt, you'll be very familiar with this particular section. This is always a key consideration, especially when you're looking to do a valuation on a clinic and determine its value at time of sale. It's the demolition clause. I'm sure many of you have heard about this or seen this in passing or talking to colleagues. This is certainly a big deal when it comes to Canadian real estate, specifically in the larger metropolitan areas. And what it can do is, for those that don't know, it allows the landlord the ability to tell you that they are going to demolish the building or the plaza and redevelop and put up a shiny condo. Why is that a problem? Well, there's a number of ways in which this will potentially play out. If we go through this particular section, what we'll see is, if the landlord intends to demolish or materially alter the project, they can provide you, the tenant, 180 days notice to leave the premises without any compensation. Why is that a problem? Well, simply put, Matt can certainly attest to this.
Yep.
Finding a space, negotiating the lease, and then finally building out the space doesn't happen in 180 days.
Yep.
So this is certainly a problem. There's simply not enough time. And to be taken by surprise by the landlord by this is a huge shock. The second piece of this is that although it appears the landlord is providing you a bit of a concession here in the second line, indicating that the landlord will provide an amount equal to the unamortized portion of the cost to tenants. We know that, frankly, like the amount that the landlord can give, it will not cover a new build somewhere else, whether it's their new building or somewhere else. So it's very important to manage this particular section. Either it can be removed, and it certainly does happen still, even in the GTA, where this is a bigger issue. Like we see this more and more frequently in leases, even brand new buildings, brand new leases. We see this in the lease. But it doesn't have to be the death knell of the practice, not whatsoever. There's ways to mitigate how effective how effective this is for the landlord, rather. There's ways to push it out, to make the banks happy when it comes to their underwriting, when they're looking to finance your buyer. There's a number of ways to make this a lot more friendly to you, let's say. And the reason why we'd want to do that is, of course, again, at time of sale, this is a very significant impact to the value of the clinic. We're looking at potential reductions in value at $300 to $350 a square foot, depending on your space. This is upwards of $500,000, $700,000. Very significant money. Not only that, for those that are looking to buy practices or who have bought practices, or those who are selling practices, we know that this has become a sticking point for people, and it can make your practice less attractive on the market. So, of course, the question is, what do you do about this? What do you do about all of this? Well, the key thing is we'd want to adhere to a plan. Just like we have a business plan to operate the clinic, we want to formulate a plan to tackle the lease. And this is it especially pertains to those that are in a space right now, but we want to be cognizant of the dates. We want to use the data and maximize your leverage here. The key thing is we want to be as early as possible to negotiate the terms of the lease. Typically, what happens is we'd start to negotiate 1 to 2 years before the expiry. The key thing here is if you approach a landlord after this course, let's say, and you tell them, look, I heard it from Jason, the demolition clause is terrible. I want to remove it from the lease, and I know I have 5 years left. Well, simply put, there's not much incentive for the landlord to change things at this point because you're locked in for the next 5 years. However, if you're approaching them 1 to 2 years before the expiry, maybe a little bit more, even 2.5, for example, there's a significant chance that if you don't get the correct terms that you're looking for, you might be able to find a new space to go to. So we need that time. Or if the landlord is intent on demolishing your plaza and putting up a condo, that timeline, that window there, that 1 to 2 years, you need that time to locate the space, do the demographic studies, determine what spaces are available, what's viable for you, and then finally negotiate and execute that lease. Also, very important to note, the converse of this is also true. If you approach the landlord 1 month before your expiry, your leverage is significantly reduced as well. It's very difficult for you to leave if you only have 1 month remaining. So in terms of the plan here, what do we do next? Well, the first thing is certainly gather all the documentation when it comes to the lease. I'm still shocked. I've been here for a number of years. I'm still shocked how many people can't find their original lease. They can't find their documents. These are critical pieces. Don't be shy. If you are missing the documents, it's as easy as asking the landlord or the broker that's involved to get the documents. They'll certainly have that on a file. You can always indicate to them that you are digitizing your records. They'd be more than happy to send that to you. But we need to have all the facts. We need to have all the history here as far as the documents. Secondly, what we want to do is identify what your goals are for the space. We want to make sure that the document is in line as much as possible with your goals personally and the career goals. The third thing is, once we have everything gathered, we determine what you want out of the space. We want to review the document for any potential risks. So that section where I highlighted the number of items that we potentially work on, in addition to the 7 key financial variables, we review that to determine, what are the potential issues, how it compares, how your rent and your lease compares to everyone else in the area. Once we've done that, again, using the data, we want to gather the data to compare what you're paying and how your lease looks to those in the area. And in the instance of us, if especially if we've worked with the landlord before, we can check what we've done with other doctors with the same landlord. We can see some of the precedent here. Once we've done all that, we need to formulate a plan as far as how to approach the landlord and, determine what paths we can potentially take given the situation. We'd want to work on the economic terms. We'd want to work on the legal terms as well. But the key things here is that, we definitely need to formulate a plan. And once we've done that, we can then review the final form lease that the landlord may present to us. So in terms of the next steps here, I hope this was valuable to everyone in the audience. Thank you again for spending your night with us to go through this. I think this particular conversation was long overdue, and this is a topic that I think should be spoken more about in the future. I'll leave it open now. I put a poll up as well. Please let us know your thoughts. Let us know any questions that you may have here. We'll leave the chat open for a couple of minutes. We're happy to chat. Any questions so far, guys? Matt, I think one of the key things that I took away from your discussion is that there's an insurmountable amount of data that you can present here to help the clinician determine if the space is going to be the right fit. It's a huge piece, and I think one of the big things is like, it's so much. If I was an individual that was looking to go through it all as a layperson, I would have no clue as far as the interpretation of that data. Yeah. How do you do it? How do you, without giving away the secret sauce?
Well, there's a lot of work setting it up. It's not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've been doing prior to getting into dental.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do this type of work for Fortune 500 companies, for retailers. So essentially what we've done is we've taken what's already out there. These were reports that Tim Hortons would spend $50,000 on. These type of guys to get this information. Probably the biggest challenge was, how do we take that and divide that number by 20 to make it affordable to dentists, because they're not going to be able to spend the same amount of money.
Yep.
And really making it dental specific, because it's not about having the information. It's how do you take this information and use it to help you on your day-to-day operations. So if you're going to spend an extra dollar on marketing, what should you do? Should you do gift cards, or should you spend more money on getting hot towels in the office? Do we provide third-party financing, or do we do you rather take on assignment? Our purging protocol. Do we deactivate people? Actually, one of the big findings was that I find a lot of practices deactivate patients too quickly.
Mm.
I've seen purging protocols. They call them 3 times over the period of 2 years, and they said no, then that's it. But we
Wow.
know that in for certain practices, there could be still 20% of the patients that would be deactivated are still patients that maybe they moved away to go to school, or maybe they're traveling for work and they're going to come back. Maybe they're just going through something in their life. So there's a lot of it. I'm very passionate about it, as you can tell,
Yes.
and it's and really the key takeaway really from my part and your part together is we often focus on when we're dealing with a patient. uh, Sometimes there's an issue over $50, over $60. When we're talking to our employees, we're negotiating wages of $1, of $2, but then we're missing those $1 million things, right? Like the lease. Full disclosure, I never made $1 on a lease. It's not something I sell. It's something you guys do, but uh, a lot of dentists don't see it. When you have a demo clause, it's like getting a hurricane to your house. Like your house is gone, your practice is gone, and I've seen that happen. I've been with dentists that, and we do valuations for dentists that have a demo clause, and just a pain in their eyes. Like we had a dentist in Yorkville, beautiful practice, beautiful location, and we were helping, basically doing garage sale of his stuff.
Wow.
And it's a really nice guy, spends a lot of money on charity, gives a lot to the community, and he's got to leave. Right. So he hired us originally for a marketing plan, and then halfway through the marketing plan, like we've done all the demographics for him. He got a letter from the landlord, and he said, well, should I still do the marketing? I said, no, we got to do the garage sale. Now we got to figure out where we're going to take your patients, how we're going to integrate it in some other practice, and we got to do it quickly. Um,
So key
so
lesson here
these
is
are all things that are so important, but
yes.
dentists just don't give it enough importance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad we're able to get together to do this. And thank you everyone for participating and joining us for this night. And I look forward to having more discussions with you in the future as well. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
night. Thank you.